In Chapter 12, it discusses the idea of multicultural communication, and it defines it as involving an understanding, appreciation, and valuing of one's own culture and an informed respect and curiosity about the ethnic cultures of others. I think this is mostly what Dr. Combs focused on whenever he was giving us the lecture, and I remember I remember a lot about what he said about how the Cambodian youth acted in the court cases whenever they were in trouble for breaking curfew, that they would stand there and they would bow their heads and they wouldn't look at the person as a sign of respect in their culture, but to us it's very disrespectful to not look at people whenever they're talking to you. And so I think that brought up a really interesting perspective on how we view other cultures and how in the Western sense we have a really hard time integrating any other kind of point of view or way of acting that is apart from what we grew up with in the Western world. And I think that that has a lot to do with creating a new digital media ethic. We came into technology very quickly in the United States, and I think that the whole idea of creating a new digital media ethic is really hard for us as a generation, maybe my generation more than the one before me, because they see all the damage that things can be done with like the easily shared information and how greased information can be, which we discussed in class. Something that we can encounter with a new media era really is a intense vulnerability for people that are just coming in that don't really know what's going on, and people who have the intellectual property that's out there, like music or writings or anything like that, that people who aren't aware of how to handle situations like that and what is okay and what isn't okay, like stealing information or plagiarizing it or just taking it as your own, how some people would say that's not okay, others would say that it is just because it's out there. And so that brings up the question of whether or not we need a new media ethic. And in the S text, he doesn't think that we really need to come up with one right now. What we need to do is learn from our mistakes, which I think is something that a lot of people don't see as being effective because of they don't want people to make mistakes. They want people to know what's going on right away. And I think that can go back to what Dr. Combs was talking about with Taoism and the Way, which has a lot to do with just going along with nature and learning on your own and finding your own self and your own inner peace, which I think a lot of people in the Western world don't do, myself included. And so I think that when it comes to a new digital media ethic, I agree with S that it would be really hard to just completely redo our entire idea of what is okay and what isn't okay, and what we need to do instead is lay it all out and let us pave the way more than just have this set of rules made by a generation that might not really understand what's going on as well, and then it have to just be a whole new way. And the people of my generation probably wouldn't do very well with that because a lot of people of my generation don't like being told what to do, and that's just kind of the way that it is. Something else that Dr. Combs brought up with a new ethic is that Martin Luther King Jr. in his I Have a Dream speech, a lot of it was plagiarized, and I've been taught since I was very, very young that you have to cite your sources, you have to do all these things so you're not stealing from other people, and so everything's always fair. And I think that it's interesting that when we look back on that, nobody would ever say that that was wrong because of what it helped to do, that the benefits far outweighed what lengths he went to do it. And so I think that also has a lot to say with if we create this new digital media ethic, will we not have such effective things happen like the I Have a Dream speech? And I think it just brings up a lot of questions of what could we lose out on if we make this new ethic of what is okay and what isn't okay. And I think it's important to not just look at it as you're stealing, you're not doing something right. It's more important to think of the long-term goals. Like when Taylor Swift took her music off of Spotify and off anywhere you can listen to it, that made it a lot harder for people to listen to her music. And yeah, it is good for artists to gain monetary value for their music and for their art that they work so hard for. That is really important. But I also think it's really important to just share what you have with people and not necessarily worry about getting something out of it. Is more of like, what other people can get out of it and not just what you can gain. So as far as new digital media ethic goes, I really do agree with us that we need to just kind of go with the way and kind of let things figure themselves out, really. Because yes, a new digital media era does make us really vulnerable, and it makes things kind of unclear about where we're going and what we're going to do. But as long as people have others in mind, like I think Taylor Swift did have other people in mind whenever she took her music off, and she had the other artists in mind. And I think that if other people operate with that idea of, well, if I put this really embarrassing picture of this person on Facebook, what's going to happen? And I think if we always are thinking about how it's going to affect other people, then we don't really need to set out this ethic of right and wrong. It's more of just, how would this affect other people around me?